The fluorescent lights flickered ominously in the empty hallway of Westfield High School as Maya Johnson straightened her shoulders and walked toward her new classroom. It was only her second week as the newest English teacher, but already she could feel the weight of 100 stares following her every move. At 28, Maya had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl sitting in her grandmother's kitchen, listening to stories about the power of education to change lives. Now, standing in the doorway of room 237, she wondered if she had bitten off more than she could chew. Maya had graduated summa cum laude from Columbia University with a master's in education, but no amount of academic preparation had readied her for the reality of teaching in a predominantly white suburban school where she was one of only 3 black faculty members. The previous teacher had left mid-semester under mysterious circumstances, and Maya had been brought in as an emergency replacement. The administration had been welcoming enough during her interviews, but she quickly discovered that not everyone was thrilled about her arrival. The trouble started small, as it always does. Snickers when she walked into the faculty lounge. Conversations that died the moment she approached. Students who suddenly developed hearing problems when she gave instructions. Maya had thick skin, developed over years of being the only black student in her honors classes, the only black intern at her previous job, the only black face in countless rooms where her presence was questioned before her qualifications were even considered. She thought she could handle anything these teenagers threw at her. She was wrong. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Maya had stayed late to grade papers, the autumn sun casting long shadows through her classroom windows. The school was nearly empty, save for a few custodial staff and the echo of basketball practice from the gym. She gathered her things and headed toward the restroom, her heels clicking against the polished linoleum floor. The moment she pushed open the heavy door, Maya knew something was off. The usual chatter and laughter that filled school bathrooms was replaced by an unsettling silence. She moved toward the sink, but before she could reach it, she heard the unmistakable sound of the door closing behind her with a decisive click. Well, well, well. Look who we have here. Maya turned to see 3 figures emerging from behind the stalls. She recognized them immediately: Brandon Mitchell, the quarterback whose father owned half the town, Jessica Cole, whose mother sat on the school board, and Marcus Thompson, whose older brother had graduated the year before as valedictorian. These weren't troubled kids from broken homes. These were the golden children, the ones who had never been told no, never faced consequences for their actions. Brandon stepped forward, his Letterman jacket gleaming under the harsh bathroom lighting. At 6 feet tall with perfectly styled blonde hair, he looked like he had been crafted in a laboratory for teenage popularity. His usual charming smile was nowhere to be found, replaced by something cold and calculating. "You know who my father is?" Brandon's voice carried the casual arrogance of someone who had never doubted their place in the world. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, but his posture radiated barely contained aggression. Maya's heart began to race, but she kept her voice steady. "I know who you are, Brandon. And I know you're supposed to be in detention right now for disrupting my class yesterday." Jessica laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the tiled walls. Her perfectly straight hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her designer clothes marked her as one of the school's elite. "Oh, she thinks she has authority here. How cute." "Listen, teacher," Marcus chimed in, emphasizing the word like it was something distasteful. Unlike the others, Marcus carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who preferred psychological warfare to physical intimidation. "You don't seem to understand how things work around here. This isn't some inner-city school where you can come in and play savior." Maya felt a familiar fire building in her chest, the same one that had sustained her through every challenge she'd faced. But this was different. These weren't ignorant comments from uninformed adults or microaggressions from well-meaning colleagues. This was deliberate, targeted harassment from students who should have been looking to her for guidance. "You're making assumptions about me that couldn't be more wrong," Maya said, taking a step forward instead of backward. "But more importantly, you're making assumptions about yourselves. Do you really think this is who you want to be?" Brandon's facade cracked slightly, revealing something uglier underneath. Don't try to psychoanalyze us, lady. We didn't ask for some diversity hire to come in here and lecture us about life. Half the parents in this town are already calling for your resignation. The words hit Maya like physical blows. She had heard whispers, of course, seen the way some parents looked at her during back-to-school night. But hearing it confirmed, knowing that her presence was being actively challenged by the community she was trying to serve, made her stomach drop. You want to know what we think? Jessica continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We think you should make this easy on everyone and just leave. Find somewhere more suitable. Somewhere you'd fit in better. Maya looked at the three teenagers surrounding her and saw something that broke her heart more than their words ever could. She saw fear. Fear of change, fear of having their worldview challenged, fear of examining the privileges they had never questioned. They weren't evil kids, but they were products of a system that had taught them their comfort mattered more than other people's dignity. For a moment, Maya considered their suggestion. It would be easier to walk away, to find a position somewhere less hostile, somewhere her expertise would be appreciated rather than questioned. She thought about her apartment, still half-packed with boxes she hadn't had time to unpack. She thought about her mother, who had warned her about taking this job, who had lived through enough discrimination to recognize the signs. But then Maya thought about something else. She thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned these same floors decades ago when black women weren't allowed to teach in schools like this. She thought about the students in her classes who actually listened, who hung on her every word when she discussed literature and life. She thought about the young black girl in her third period class who had started participating more, who had told Maya she was thinking about college for the first time. Maya took a deep breath and smiled. Not the tight, professional smile she had perfected for difficult parent conferences, but a genuine, warm smile that seemed to confuse the three teenagers. You know what you're right about? Maya said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I don't fit in here. Not yet. But that's not because there's something wrong with me. It's because there's something wrong with a system that makes you think you can corner your teacher in a bathroom and threaten her into quitting. She pulled out her phone, and the three students tensed. But instead of calling security or the principal, Maya did something none of them expected. She opened her camera and began recording herself. My name is Maya Johnson, and I'm an English teacher at Westfield High School, she said into the camera, her voice clear and confident. I want to share something with you about what it means to stand up for yourself, not with anger or retaliation, but with truth and courage. Brandon stepped forward, panic creeping into his voice. Hey, you can't record us without permission. That's illegal. Maya kept the camera focused on herself. I'm not recording you. I'm recording me. And I'm sharing my story because I think it's time people understood what really happens in schools when we don't address the culture of intimidation and prejudice that some students think is acceptable. She turned the camera toward the mirror, showing her own reflection alongside the three students who were now backing toward the door. These three students have just spent the last few minutes explaining to me that I don't belong here because of the color of my skin. They've told me that parents are calling for my resignation, not because of my qualifications or my teaching ability, but because they see me as a diversity hire. Maya's voice never wavered, never rose to anger. She spoke with the calm authority of someone who had found her power and refused to be intimidated into silence. But here's what I want everyone to understand, Maya continued, now addressing the camera directly. This isn't really about me. This is about every young person who has ever been told they don't belong somewhere because of who they are. This is about the message we send when we allow intimidation to triumph over education, when we let fear drive out knowledge. Jessica tried to interrupt, her voice shaking. This is going too far. We were just talking. We didn't mean anything by it. Maya turned to face the three students directly, lowering her phone but keeping it recording. You meant every word of it. And that's okay. Because now we have an opportunity to talk about it openly instead of pretending these attitudes don't exist. The bathroom door suddenly opened, and Principal Williams entered, drawn by the sound of voices. Dr. Sarah Williams was a woman in her 50s who had been running Westfield High for over a decade. She took in the scene immediately, 3 students who looked like they'd been caught red-handed, and Maya standing calmly with her phone in her hand. "Is there a problem here?" Dr. Williams asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Actually, there's an opportunity here," Maya replied. "These 3 students have just given me the most valuable lesson I could ask for, not just about this school's culture, but about how we can address it constructively." She stopped recording and pocketed her phone, then looked at each of the 3 students in turn. "Brandon, Jessica, Marcus. You're not bad kids. You're smart, capable young people who have been raised in a system that taught you certain beliefs. But you're also old enough to question those beliefs and decide for yourselves what kind of people you want to be." Principal Williams crossed her arms, clearly prepared to handle this situation with disciplinary action. But Maya held up a hand. "Dr. Williams, I have a proposal. Instead of suspending these students or calling their parents, I'd like to invite them to help me with something. I'm starting an after-school discussion group about literature and social justice. I think their perspectives, challenged and broadened through honest conversation, could be valuable." The 3 students stared at Maya in shock. They had expected consequences, punishment, retaliation. They hadn't expected grace. "You want us to join your club?" Marcus asked, suspicion clear in his voice. "I want you to help me create something new," Maya replied. "A space where we can have the conversations that need to happen, where we can examine our assumptions and biases in a safe environment. Where you can challenge my perspectives just as much as I challenge yours." Brandon shook his head, confusion replacing his earlier bravado. "I don't understand. We were horrible to you. Why would you want to help us?" Maya smiled again, and this time there was something almost maternal in it. "Because that's what teachers do. We don't just teach subjects, we teach people how to think, how to grow, how to become better versions of themselves. You 3 just showed me exactly what this school needs most." Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened at Westfield High School. Maya's discussion group, which she named Voices and Choices, started with just those 3 reluctant students. But word spread quickly about the teacher who had turned a moment of harassment into an opportunity for growth. Other students began asking to join. Teachers started dropping by to listen. Parents, initially suspicious, became curious about what was happening in room 237 after school on Wednesdays. Maya shared her story, not as a victim seeking sympathy, but as an educator demonstrating the power of responding to hatred with understanding, to ignorance with education, to fear with courage. She talked about her grandmother's stories, about the importance of seeing each other's humanity even in moments of conflict. Brandon, Jessica, and Marcus became some of the group's most active participants. They didn't transform overnight, but they began asking questions they had never thought to ask before. They started examining their assumptions, challenging their inherited prejudices, and most importantly, they began seeing Maya not as an outsider who didn't belong, but as a teacher who had something valuable to offer. The discussion group tackled difficult topics: implicit bias, privilege, the history of education and civil rights, the power of literature to change perspectives. Maya assigned readings that opened minds and hearts, from James Baldwin to Maya Angelou to contemporary voices that spoke to the experiences of all students. But perhaps the most powerful moment came 6 months later, during the school's annual academic awards ceremony. Brandon Mitchell, the same young man who had once questioned Maya's right to teach at his school, stood at the podium as student body president. "I want to talk about something that happened earlier this year," Brandon said, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "I want to talk about the day I learned what real strength looks like." He told the story of that afternoon in the bathroom, not sparing himself or his friends from accountability for their actions. He spoke about how Maya Johnson had responded to their harassment not with anger or retaliation, but with an invitation to grow. Ms. Johnson taught me that courage isn't about intimidating people who are different from you, Brandon continued, his eyes finding Maya in the audience. Courage is about admitting when you're wrong, learning from your mistakes, and becoming better than you were before. The standing ovation that followed lasted for several minutes. But Maya wasn't watching the audience, she was watching her students, seeing the pride and growth in their faces, knowing that she had done what she came to do. As Maya packed up her classroom that final day of the school year, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The boxes that had sat unpacked in her apartment for months were now filled with student projects, thank you notes, and photos from field trips and group activities. She had faced down intimidation and hatred, not with matching force, but with the revolutionary act of refusing to be diminished by other people's limitations. She had shown her students, her colleagues, and her community that strength comes not from tearing others down, but from lifting them up. Maya Johnson had arrived at Westfield High School as a teacher. She was leaving as a catalyst for change, having proven that sometimes the most powerful response to, "you don't belong here," is to plant yourself firmly and show everyone exactly why you do. The story of that day in the bathroom became legend at Westfield High, passed down from class to class as an example of what happens when courage meets compassion, when education triumphs over intimidation, and when one person's refusal to be silenced changes everything. Years later, Brandon, Jessica, and Marcus would all cite that moment as the beginning of their real education, the day they learned that the best teachers don't just fill your mind with knowledge, they open your heart to the endless possibility of human growth and understanding. And Maya? She continued teaching, carrying with her the unshakable knowledge that every act of courage, no matter how small it might seem in the moment, has the power to change the world. What did you think of Maya's incredible response to this challenging situation? Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. If this story moved you, please consider supporting the Heartfelt Tales channel by hitting that like button, sharing this video with someone who needs to hear Maya's message of courage and compassion, and subscribing for more inspiring stories that celebrate the power of human resilience and growth. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories that remind us of the best in humanity. Remember to ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads, and let us know in the comments what stories you'd like to see featured next on Heartfelt Tales.